Hi, Tracy.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. It's just about 20 minutes to 12, so it's still morning. And my name is Esther from Leicester, and this is Kenya Diaspora Media. And today I have the privilege of bringing a super guest. Is it guest? How do you pronounce it, Miss?
Guest.
Guest, yeah, there we go. You see, I have a tropical mango accent from the Rift Valley, from Western Kenya, a mix of all sorts, right? So I don't have the same accent you have. You have grown up where? Since 7. How old were you when you moved to where you are now?
Yeah, so grew up in Kenya, in Kisii, for most of my early few years, and then from age 7/8 moved to the UK, a town called Loughborough, and then Colville.
Yeah, and now where are you located?
So
Resident?
for the last few years, from when I started university until I graduated and got a job, I've been based in Coventry, which is just next door to Leicester.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Tracy has a very Leicestershire, Warwickshire, Shire kind of accents. I have the mix. I try to pick from wherever I am. I've tried not to change. Sometimes she would tell me, Mom, this is the way things are pronounced. But I say, this is the way I grew up. So I can try to change some aspects, but don't worry about the accent. We've come to talk today. For the past few weeks, I've been talking about the heart of a child. And I have managed to get someone who is in their 60s. I have managed to get someone who is in their 30s. And today I get someone in their 20s. Hopefully in the future, I'll get someone in their teens and maybe a child so that they can tell us the heart of a child. This is Spices of Life, and we cover a number of topics from spiritual, physical, intellectual, currency or commercial, as we call it, commercial as in money, and then currency as in the currency of heaven, that is love. And then we talk about emotions as well as social relationships. That's what spices stand for, although it can stand for actual things that spice up life, or things the things that don't bring the good flavor in life. So what are your names? I have been talking. My name is Esther from Leicester, or you can call me Esther Nduta, or you can call me Nduta Washosho. I have many names, or you can call me Mrs. Hutchings. But what are your names, young lady?
So my name is Tracy Mumbi, just Tracy Mumbi. Some people call me Trace, some people call me T, some people, like Mom, calls me Mumbi, but my full complete name is Tracy Mumbi.
Tracy Mumbi Wanduta.
Yeah, that too.
Wanduta. Okay. I know you don't want to have a third name in that way because you're leaving a space in future. You could add a third name, or you could remain like me, Esther Nduta. I'm married, but I don't use my husband's name yet because of the processes of the documentation. I've gone through that for a long time. I just want to chill. He knows I am the wife, and I've brought my husband before on these programs. Anyway, today we are talking about the heart of a child. And before we move on to the main issues and the main agendas of the topic, I have a few starters, Tracy. Okay, great. Just a few starters. And one of the questions I would like you to ask, and you can ask me questions anyway, just relax, feel free, look at the audience and talk to them, talk to me as well. So one of the questions I normally ask is, what is your best childhood memory? I know this is impromptu, but don't worry. Just try to remember one of the best memories you have, and why is it the best memory?
Yeah, I think for me, I have quite a lot of good memories, and they don't necessarily surround anything particularly significant. But for me, the memories that I tend to recall the most are ones where I'm just out in nature with my friends, and we're just experimenting, doing this, that, and the other, like just trying out lots of different things that are just fun and a bit like carefree, whether it's like climbing trees or going for walks, or we used to do weird things like hunt for fish and for newts and frogs and all of those kind of things. That was when I was very, very young. But I enjoyed stuff like that because it just felt like time doesn't end. And we were just able to enjoy time together, laughing, enjoying. So I don't know if I have a specific memory, but those are some of the things that I used to like doing as a young person.
Now, those memories you are saying were so good about catching newts and going into the park, particularly Snipstone Park, you and your friend. They used to scare me, they used to frighten me, and I'm thinking, this child, how can I stop her from going into the park? It's very beautiful, but it has a forest kind of a feel, and of course there are ponds there, so I didn't know how careful you guys could play. But again, every time you went, you introduced me to the park, and you helped me also to start those walks in the park. So I just trusted that she would be safe, and she was. But she was young, 8, 9, 10. Those are the days you used to
like 11, 12, 13.
Really?
Yeah, it was like secondary school, like year 7 onwards.
All right, then I trust you. And if those were the best memories, I'm glad you enjoyed those memories. I don't think I was too harsh, or was I?
No, you didn't express the concern that you probably felt.
Yeah.
Which is good in some ways, because really I didn't ever get hurt or harmed. I mean, maybe there were a few things here and there that felt a little like, oh, I don't know if this is a good situation or not, but never did I fear that this could end really badly. I think we were pretty responsible. Like, we'd often come home to one person's house, so a parent, maybe not you, but somebody's parent would see us and see that we're okay. Maybe sometimes you...
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're here. Very okay. I haven't had any bad stories. Would you like to know some of my childhood memories?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure, go for it.
And feel free to ask me questions. I'm not the only one to be asking you questions. So if you feel like you have a burning question to do with memories, or to do with anything else about childhood, please feel free to ask. So my childhood memories, there are many, right? But I wasn't a very playful child. When I was talking to Marie, you know Marie, I did mention to her, I wasn't so playful, jumpy games. No, I didn't do those. But then I spent a lot of time on my own. I was growing up in a village with my grandma. So I had an opportunity to be contemplative at an early age. And most of the time I'll just be daydreaming, building castles in there and all that. But we used to do pretend play. You know Mary. So I was talking to Mary about pretend play. She told me she didn't do as much. But we did a lot of pretend plays.
Well, like playing house.
Yes, yeah. Like house, husbands and wives. Okay, we didn't quite understand what that was. We used to call it moms and dads.
Yes.
And sometimes you could pinch your parents' clothes and you could wear them, like they're really big, but you would be feeling like you're the mama and the baba. And then we would build houses, but we didn't build houses like tree houses. In the West, children build with wood and like houses. We just used to create boundaries on the ground with stones or soil, and we would say this is the sitting room, this is the bedroom, this is the kitchen, and sometimes we would try to fit in those. We would make them sizable, maybe just for standing, but we would make them sizable, and you say, now I'm going to the sitting room, Mom, I'm doing this. And now the other thing I was telling Mary, we didn't know so much about doctors and nurses and all that, because rarely would we go to these places. So we knew about either pastors in churches, teachers, and we would pretend those. And then the moms and dads. So we would be having babies. Then, we would be pretending we're the mothers. Like you know what I mean? And then the teachers, because of course when you went to school, you would now experience the teachers and the way they would do teaching. So you'd have some of the village kids to be your students and you teach them. And then you would be pastors as well. So we did a lot of those, and those are some of the good memories that I have. In our neighborhood, one funny memory is that they used to brew, local brew, and we would just go and sip it with our hands, dirty hands, and we would just, and feel a bit tipsy, not really knowing what we were doing, but it's the fermented taste that we were just taking. Thankfully, I didn't become an alcoholic, or I didn't really desire to go after that. After some time, I thought it was really filthy and dirty. So I stopped. So that is childhood memories, good ones. Do you have a worst childhood memory?
I think a lot of my worst childhood memories are attached to pain, but they're like injuries. So I remember there was one time I was riding a bike with one of my friends, and we were on the way to somewhere, and somehow, because I think maybe the bike was a little too big for me, I don't know how I wasn't managing it, but I was riding quite fast, and then I hit something, and then the bike kind of like twisted, but then I fell, but the handlebar, it twisted so much so it's like this way, and then the handlebar went into the side of my hip.
And you never said it, Tracy, until today.
No, I think I did
you?
Because I ended up turning around and going back home. I was like, I'm not going out because the pain was excruciating, and I ended up developing like a bump there. So there was that.
Did you tell me about that? Because I don't remember. Maybe you came home and...
I think I came home because
maybe
I came
didn't
home
take
too
it
soon.
so seriously. Now that is wrong, because you're saying about it now. But that particular time, if you came and told me, I could have just off and thought maybe it's just childhood. Those little injuries and all that. I didn't even check. I don't remember doing that. So to me, it may not have been so serious, but to you, it was that serious. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Very sorry.
Very forgiven.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that. And probably, I wouldn't say it's my worst, but I think it comes with many people's childhoods. I think I was like a pretty good, friendly person to most people. But I think the dynamics I don't like to this day, and maybe partly it's because you have those experiences or you think you're having those experiences, is feeling excluded. It's like you see all these big groups that are gathering and organizing to do lots of different things, and it's like you want to be invited but you don't feel invited, but then you're like, I don't know if I'd really want to be there, but it's still nice to be invited. It's still nice to feel the circle is open for you to be able to be a part, even if you don't really want to, like you want to almost be able to say no to an invitation because it was just nice to be invited in the first place. So I think a lot of young people, I think even today, like there's a lot of the fallings out or the poor dynamics that happen between them are because there are these exclusive friendships, there are cliques, there are the popular people, this group, that group, this group. And that seems like that's where the activity is happening, where the group is. And I think it just wasn't a nice feeling of being a young person, of knowing that people are going out and they're doing lots of fun things. And it's like, I don't know, should I invite myself? Should I also find my other friends and we do something? But really it's like, I just wanted to be included. For me personally, like I don't think it affected me too much, but it's just that kind of thing. I think it's partly the way God has wired me, but also many of us, like we don't like exclusivity when it comes to relationships and community, and so it doesn't make your childhood fun when you feel everybody else is doing something fun out there and you're maybe at home, or it looks like your friendship circle isn't really getting up to too much fun. But it's strange you talking about your friendships and wanting to go out and party. It's not party. It's not just party.
Friend,
just to hang out.
Hang out with your friends. For me, when I was growing up, those were not things I really was thinking of. I wasn't thinking about inviting myself to other friends because it was open. We used to play outdoors most of the time, but the places we invited ourselves to, our weddings.
Sure.
So in the village you didn't wait to be invited, and I used to be told off. I'll be told off by my parents. My auntie raised me up also as well, and they would say, Esther, if you've not been invited to a wedding, don't go. But every child went. It didn't matter whether we were ready for the wedding, washed up or not, as long as there was food and there was a wedding in the neighborhood, we would go. And we would just call other kids within the village and we would just go to these weddings, and that was fun. Now for you as a child, my worst memory of some pain for you, there was a time we were going to watch Scooby-Doo. I don't know whether you remember. Scooby-Doo, you hurt your thumb, and we had really planned to take you to this Scooby-Doo. You got caught. I don't know what you... I
tripped up the stairs when I was running and I landed on my thumb.
Now, I felt guilty for a long time because I know your thumb was twisted, proper twisted, right? And I know it was painful. Now, I didn't know what to do because I was with my husband as well, and I'm thinking now, should we go to the cinema, to the Scooby-Doo? Should we take Tracy? And there were other people. I think we had gone as a group.
I think it was a youth group.
There we go.
a family
So
outing.
I'm sitting there in the back of my mind. I'm feeling like a very responsible mother. I can see this thumb is very twisted. So the only hope I had is like, adrenaline could hold you long enough. And I don't know whether we twisted it back or we left
I think we just left it.
we left it like that. So I do feel guilty about things like that happened, that we were kind of beyond my control. But you are a very persevering child. So in as much as you are in pain, I don't know how you managed that particular night, but somehow you did. So tell me, how was it? I've never really even asked you about it, because when you have the guilt, you're like, okay, I'm just praying and hoping. Maybe it was miraculously healed. I don't know, but I don't know how you survived that particular
I don't know.
night.
I feel like some of it is you trust what people are saying, like it's not too bad, and then it maybe reverse psychology. It does some calming. It's like a what's it called, placebo type effect. If other people aren't panicking too much about it, you still feel the pain, but maybe you don't feel it as much as if somebody was saying, oh my goodness, it looks broken, and why is it so swollen? So I think I have a pretty high tolerance for pain, and so maybe I wasn't even expressing how seriously it hurt.
It's not the first time about tolerance with pain. I think you do have tolerance with pain. I remember when you were younger, again with malaria and all that, you would tolerate pain. It's until it shows and you think this child is going to die. It's passing out. And that's when you're rushing this child to hospital. Anyway, we're coming now to the main topic. I do follow the framework of Spices of Life. And one of the things you had asked me earlier on today, when you were planning to talk, you were kind of asking me matters of faith or spiritual matters. Would you like either to ask me the question you asked me earlier, or suggest the kind of trajectory you would like us to take through, so that we talk about the spices of life as in spiritual first, then we can move on to the physical, intellectual, then commercial or currency, and then emotions and social relations. So what was that thing that you were asking me about earlier, you had a comment about?
So to give context, like I work mainly with young people. I'm very passionate about teenagers and that kind of age, from around like maybe 11, 12, 13 to around like 18. I have always been quite passionate about that age group, but also now with the work that I do. So I work in a church as a ministerial assistant, and my main role is like a student pastor. So I work a lot with students that are in university. And also very passionate about them, because I think some of those years, like the 11s to the 21, 22, very critical in terms of not just spiritual development, but development in so many ways. Like the mind is so malleable and open and flexible to learning, but also in some ways, like those are some of the places we can start to pick up really bad habits. So really, as a young person leading other young people, I'm often trying to understand my own journey with God and my own journey also in maturing into an adult, and how that's different or similar to the young people that I see around me. Like, what are their needs? Where are the challenges in their faith? Where do I see that maybe they're doing a great job in connecting with God, but maybe in other places it feels like there are gaps, or there's a disconnect between them and their faith and their God.
No, sorry. Let me just interrupt a little bit. You're in your 20s. When did you kind of come to faith? And then after that, when did you decide that you wanted to work with these people of this age group? So I think my mum raised me in a Christian household. We'd go to church pretty much on a weekly basis, and also involvement in other things that might be going on. Remember the time you had to choose between football and going to church? And I didn't force you, just say today you have to decide. Anyway, go ahead.
So Christianity is not something that was particularly brand new to me by the time I accepted Jesus as my own personal Lord and Saviour. But I was around 13, I think. That was where I decided to lay down football, which I used to love playing. But we'd play games on a Sunday, and we'd have training on a Friday, and on Fridays is when the youth would be happening, and of course Sundays is church. So I'd either never be able to make it to church services, or I'd have to be leaving very early to go to my game. But then I remember God I didn't understand at the time it was God, but now looking back, I'm like, I think that was God. You know how he pursues you. I was walking home one day from a game, and the question came in my head, like, God or football, Tracy? And for some reason, I just decided, like, I want to follow God. So I decided to quit football, and then that gave opportunity for me to be involved more in church. And obviously, if you're in church and you're relatively attentive, you start understanding or paying attention a little bit more to the messages that are being shared. And then you understand, oh, wait, God isn't some distant person way over there who just watches over the earth. He's a God who cares for me specifically and personally. So it was around age 13 that I finally gave my life to Jesus, because even if I didn't understand all of the truths or many of the truths, I understood the core truth of the gospel, that Jesus died for me and I was sinful and I needed his forgiveness, and he was going to empower me to live a different and better life, one that's not just focused on me but others. But that's when I became a Christian and got baptized within the same year, and then as I journeyed on, I think to some extent, like, I did grow gradually in my faith, but to really, like, surrender your day-to-day life to Jesus is more gradual, like different things that he would tell me to either let go of or to trust him in, like when exams would come around and I'd pray to him and I'd see that I have peace or favor or all of these different things that maybe my friends around me didn't have, partly because none of them were Christians. I was in a school that was majority probably, and if there were Christians, I didn't know there were Christians in my school. And so, I think the gradual process of growing in God was what came after. And then maybe in universities when it really picked up, and then you start to bring big areas of your life to God, like career, because you were asking about how then did I end up working with young people. And I went into university to do a biomed degree, thinking maybe that would lead to further down the line going into medicine. And then you get there and you're like, firstly, I don't know if I'm as passionate about science as I used to be, but also you start to see your heart is being stirred for people in a different way. So maybe I'm not there to help people medically or physically in terms of their physical health, but things were bothering me, or began to bother me more, like, why don't young people or people in general grasp the truths of God, the truth in the Bible? Why aren't people like wanting to grow in God, or they seem unable to grow in God? And sometimes you think these are things that everybody's bothered about, but really the more you go on, the more you understand actually there are certain, I guess, quote unquote burdens that God gives you or draws or desires to impact others that aren't passions or burdens that other people carry, at least not to the same degree that you do. And so with that, doors just opened, and God started shaping my heart in a different way. Even with the YouTube videos I was making on my YouTube channel, you see like, oh, I really love expressing the word of God to people and seeking to help them apply it to their life.
Yeah. So I am graced because you took that path and you saved me a lot of stress. You still do. So I can relax, I can surrender you to God, knowing that you're in safe hands. So that is a very, how can I say, comforting part of me, knowing that God has taken care of that part of me and part of you as well. And one of the things you had asked me, what things promote faith or what things hinder faith, particularly for this young person. These young persons. What do you think promotes faith? Or rather spiritual matters, or draws them to be like the way you are, or to be the way like you want to promote these children to be, young people, and what hinders? So those are two parts. If you would start with the promotion, what do you think would promote or promotes?
I think a big part is seeing other young people that are also maturing and growing in their faith and accepting Jesus and going on to live for God. I think so I was like the oldest of the young people in my previous church, in my home church, where you're still attending, and that was great. But also, it's like sometimes when you come into a space like the church that I'm in now, or the environment that I came to, which was more city, you begin to see, oh wait, there are even more other young people that are similar in age to me and are wanting to pursue God. And I think that for me makes me realize not only is it possible, but it's good that young people are together, seeking God together and seeking to grow in God. So I think a lot of it is the environment that you are in. So maybe there are young people, young Christians who are around other young people, but they're not Christians. And so what you're not seeing is somebody model for you at the same age as you, the ways of God. You're seeing them model other things that are so contradictory to the ways of God, but because it's so, they're the majority, it makes it very hard to feel like I can live a sustainable life in God amongst these people. But when you come into an environment where there are lots of other young people that are also passionate about God, or at least seeking to grow in Him, I think that's one big factor that can help you fan into flame your own faith. But what do you think?
That's good. And the other positive aspect I've seen, the church leadership. Most of the westernized churches, like where I am and where you are, they promote young people instead of hindering them and telling them you're not experienced, or you do not know much of what church is, or you do not know much of theology. They don't stop. So they give you the platform, they give you the opportunity to be. And I remember even the pastor who baptized you would really encourage young people to be part of the church. They don't push them on the side saying, oh, you do not know. I've been to churches where they think, oh, a young person like you now, you started ministering to a big church at 21. Yes. So some people wouldn't trust you with the pulpit at 21. They would think you're not well knowledgeable. But I do believe in the gift of the Holy Spirit and the gift that God had put in you. The one that you are putting out there on YouTube is one of the things that landed you where you are, because your gift will make way for you. I think that's what the Bible says. So there is the aspect of God helping you. We cannot take the credit from that. There is the grace of God. There's the gifting of God that gives you the way forward or paves the way for you. And then you don't sit on the gift. You do something to showcase your gift. And then the people who give you the opportunity to be. Then after that, now when you see now your peers are also within that kind of attraction, or they're into wanting to know God more, I think that all promotes. Now let's go on the hindrance.
Can I just add something?
Yes, please.
Which kind of will be on the hindrance side as well.
Yeah.
In a similar but then contrary way to what you're saying, there are also churches where young people are very gifted and able, but the church can become over-reliant on them, and it hurts them because it almost causes the young person to either become burnt out or to resent the fact that every time, let's say they need a drummer, this person will do it, this person will do it, and it gives very little room for discipleship of the young person. So I think that's the thing. We can't just give young people platforms, even if that's what we want to do. It's amazing to be able to raise young people, and I think more young people need to be raised, not just to feel they need to be doing the big on the front platform things, but to know they can contribute. I think to know you can contribute to the space that you're in, whether it's serving behind the scenes or connecting with other young people and making sure that they feel welcomed into the space, or whether it is preaching, leading, whatever it is. I think it's really important to emphasize that young people can contribute, but then it's also really important to guard them so that you're not seeing them only through the lens of their contribution, but more so you're seeing them through the lens of like wanting to also disciple them, wanting to also help them mature, wanting to just love on them and appreciate them for who they are, and actually showing concern for what are some of the things that they're facing, some of the challenges. Because in some particular churches or with certain friends that I've spoken to, that can often be the case as well, is like an over-reliance as well on young people, or just the congregation in general. That means you're not meeting the needs, like the spices again, the needs of the whole person. But I would say that can maybe cause young people to want to not be as involved in church, or to perceive that church is only done in this particular way, or I'm only good in church when I'm useful.
Oh, right. Okay. I didn't see that coming, but I can understand. So there is the importance of discipling. Yeah. And one of the things, my desire is to disciple people. And hopefully I've discipled you, not so like theoretically so much, but one of the things I'd like to do is to model the ways of Christ to you. So even when moments we fall out, you see sometimes, even moments when I have felt like, oh, I've been offended by this or that, I remember what Christ has taught us. And to me, discipling by example is a very good thing. The church, I've allowed the church, okay, not me, God has allowed you, has given you a church where I believe you are being discipled at the same time you're ministering. And I think your church has allowed that room for that. So if you could maybe mention maybe a couple of other things that could hinder the spiritual growth in a young person's life, what could it be?
I think for my generation, I would say technology. Not that technology is a bad thing or an evil thing, but unfortunately for my generation, it's become an all-consuming thing. I think, I don't know whether it's that young people aren't developed enough to the point of being able to practice self-control and discipline, and yet you're given a tool with so much power and ability and access to so many different things. But I think technology's become a big distraction for young people. It's reduced their attention span. Like the kind of entertainment they're used to is like 10 seconds of videos is all they need. And so when it comes to applying your mind to things that take a little bit more thinking, a little bit longer thinking, like their minds aren't able to apply themselves in that way. And I think also technology has, in some ways, it's created an opportunity for young people to be pastored online. A lot of them, which you're not really pastored, it's that you're listening to a sermon online, but they think they're being pastored online, because with the access to so many thousands, millions of videos of preaching online, and you can access churches from across the world, young people maybe don't feel, especially I guess as they grow older and their parents aren't necessarily there to keep them as accountable, they just feel maybe I can just engage in church online, I'll listen to the sermon, I'll be fine. But they don't understand the fact that church is meant to be a communal space for us to engage with one another, to say, how are you doing, how was your day, for me to be able to notice where you're not doing so well or when you're doing great. Whereas if you're watching a sermon at home in your room, I'm not going to be able to see that. So I think technology has, both in the fact that it's caused a distraction but also caused access to so much information, it's caused young people to maybe be over reliant on that to help them to cope and to grow in their faith, as opposed to appreciating relationships. I would probably say it applies to adults as well. I know sometimes we like to paint it as if it's just young people, but I think it's just the challenges of this generation and the generations upcoming, whatever age you're at. I think technology is a big one that is a big contender for all of us.
You're right to say so, because in as much as it's a younger person's problem, addictive, I think even we, the older generation, are getting there. So, but being conscious again of the segment, one of the segments of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. You have to remain awake to that reality. You have to remain awake that you're a disciple of Christ, and there are fruits of the Spirit that we need to cultivate. And of course, again, fellowship, real fellowship, that it's part of what we become. I think it's Paul who says, do not stop gathering together. Yes, gathering on the virtual reality or virtual systems is not quite the real thing. Like now I am here today with you, and I am gaining more, because maybe after talking here, we can be able to go to the kitchen and learn how to prepare a meal. We can be able to go for a walk. So life is not just digital. It is more open. Now, I'm going to touch on the spices of life, each of the topics. We've touched on the spiritual. But before I move on from the aspect of the spiritual, what do you think of the mental health aspect, and what is its impact on the spiritual, particularly with the young people? Because I'm thinking, or I hear, or it's maybe I am imagining that younger people can also be adversely affected by mental health issues that impact on their spiritual sense. What comment do you have on that?
I think it's absolutely true, and that's part of why it's that there is a big connection between them. And we don't have the stats to pull today, but you see how the introduction of technology and the access to technology has significantly impacted mainly the big mental health challenges that come are anxiety and depression. And it's interesting, I was listening to something the other day that was talking about how the online space even more so predominantly affects girls more than boys, because while boys and girls may spend equal amounts of time in front of screens, guys tend to do gaming. Okay. And with gaming, they're probably playing with their friends. There's a lot of like strategy being used. There's a lot of cooperation. There's not very much room for comparison because they're just working together to play a game. And yes, it's harmful to their brains in some ways. But for girls, both the fact that they're on a screen, but also that they're more likely to be the ones on Instagram and all of these different things with filters that are helping them to look a little bit more beautified. All of these different things are more likely to affect girls, because then girls are the ones more likely to struggle with body image issues or not feeling good enough, and all of these different things. And so I think for both boys and girls, there is a big, huge impact that even tech and then mental health impact their spirituality. Because by the time they even come to God, it's like they just feel so inadequate in so many different ways. And so I think that's why it goes back to what we were saying of discipleship, and why discipleship is really important, because what we're not trying to say is that young people shouldn't be on technology, but what we're trying to say to them, what does it look like to be a good steward of your time and to put boundaries on your use of media? What does it look like to know that everybody looks different, and some people were built this way and some people are built that way, but you, the Bible tells you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and all of these different truths, so that you're helping them to connect what the social media world is telling them to what they're feeling about themselves or what they're feeling when they look around. I think it's just about finding ways to better disciple our young people to be able to use technology wisely and to think critically, to even know that not everything you see on media is true and right, especially because media, they have a way of amplifying certain things, like because the news being spread is so popular, sometimes we think things that are popular are true, and that's not the case. So I think it's discipling them to think critically about their social media usage, and because these things they're built for us to be addicted to them. They're built on the fact that like the more time we spend on them, the more profitable it is for the companies that make them. So even educating young people on that, like the companies have built them for them to be a little bit destructive in those particular ways, I think would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Now, when I'm looking at my framework of spices, we've touched quite on the spiritual, and I like it that way. I normally would like to know we are spiritual beings with this human experience, or the other way around. We are human beings that have a spirit within us. And it's important to know that the spiritual cannot be separated from the physical.
Yeah.
Now, you've talked about gaming, you've talked about technology in general, and you've talked about the spiritual aspect of a person, especially the young people. Now, let's look at the physical being. In the spaces that we are now, do you think young people have enough to occupy them in the physical world, as in healthy eating, healthy exercising, as in sleeping? If you can think in those kind of points, what do you think is maybe different from your time as you were growing up, and maybe my time, how we had plenty of time to sleep and play? Yeah. So do you think there is a change as well in terms of their physical well-being? And how can we maybe be able to help them? You can tell us some of the activities you normally do with your young people.
Yeah, I think again, probably it's interesting because, again, not to bring it back to tech, but tech is such a big part. If you're sitting for 4, 5, 6 hours of your day on your phone, it's very unlikely that you're going to be exercising. And so physically, like, it's not an activity that helps you. You're much less you're probably more likely to forget to eat, or if you are, maybe again what you're seeing on your screen is impacting what you think about your own body, and so then you're maybe eating less. Maybe the issues that young people face now are more around eating disorders in terms of like anorexia, bulimia, or restrictive eating. But also on the other side, I think tech has enabled people to have access to more videos on fitness, more videos on healthy eating, so they're able to educate themselves. So I think if they can find the right platforms, there are lots of great ways for people to stay active and fit through technology. I remember I watched this video of this guy, and he'd started this movement during the lockdown, where he was basically doing fitness training for schools online via Zoom, and it just blew up very quickly. So he would get on Zoom, and these schools would do P classes via Zoom, and then he basically blew up from there because it became global, where there were some kids who were, if they were working from home, they could tune into this 20-minute, half an hour, 1 hour class online, and there are other young people and they're doing it together. So I think the tech again is very attached to physical. Again, if you feel anxious and depressed, which is mental, you're less likely to want to get out and stay fit, even though you should be doing that, because that's when it releases the endorphins, the feel-good hormones that increase esteem and happiness and all of those different things. But I think it's, again, tech is very attached to that. But without considering tech, I think young people still need a lot of help with their eating and food choices, because they forget that one day their bodies will change and they won't be able to consume the same amount of sweets and chocolate and rubbish that they're eating and feel healthy and fit, or they won't be able to be in a position to be actively fit majority of their day. But kids don't also play out as much these days. Again, a lot of the activities indoors with friends on screens. So so what you've said is quite right, and I think at the end of the day, to me, I'm thinking is the choice and the self-control, again, the capacity to be able to choose what is right for you and what is wrong for you. So refusing to eat, becoming anorexic, for boys and girls nowadays, it's not the solution to staying slim, because your body muscles are not building strongly. So I think we still need that balance to be indoors and at the same time to be outdoors, and that brings us now to the eye of the intellect. I think it depends on what you know as now intellect, information. When I talk about intellect, I'm just saying the knowledge that we have. That can also include the skills that we have. So do you think we as parents, are we instilling the right information for our children, or do you think we become too busy to be able to maybe impact the correct knowledge, the correct skills, the correct, and then at school, do you think children or young people are getting enough of this? What do you think? I think one thing maybe we can overlook, I'm not in people's homes to know what they're modeling, but one thing we can overlook is maybe we're telling our young people to stay off their phone, but then they look over and what they see is we're using our phones a lot.
Do I do that, Tracy?
I'm not saying you specifically.
Okay, I'm only saying, I know sometimes I am tempted as well to be on my phone. Hopefully I use it productively.
It's that thing of we're not modeling what we're asking. Maybe that could be one hurdle, or we're not in a position again to have enough time to consider how we can give them alternatives, because if you're saying get off your phone, then what are you telling them to do? What are you asking them to do? What have you put in place that can help them be using their time better? So I think we've got to be able and ready to also do the research or the creative thinking to engage them in other ways. But I'm not sure what the curriculums of schools are at the moment and how much they're teaching them about their use of technology. I know some schools, they ban phones being used during the day, and somehow kids are able to manage it, and they're doing fine. So I think to some extent a lot of it is when they get home. But even sometimes in the youth sessions that we run for young people, it's like we're constantly telling them to put their phone away. So again, it's that thing of, you can't just be telling them to put their phone away. Eventually you've got to be starting to help them understand what are the impacts of this screen on their well-being, or on these different aspects of their lives. I think those are some of the things that we need to be helping them. But I understand it's so difficult to help young people be able to break away from their phones, because again, it goes back to what we were talking about, feeling included. Now I don't have to feel included physically. It's about like, I want to feel included online, because that's where the social life is happening. So when you're telling me to get off my phone, what you're telling me to do is come away from my community. Because the community, the socializing, the connecting, the drama that's being shared is all happening online. And I'm sure we can agree, for all of us, whether as adults or young people, you don't like to feel out of the loop. Even though there's a healthy aspect to that. Maybe for adults it's more so you're very obsessed with checking the news. That's how you feel in the loop, and you feel aware of what's going on in the world. But really what's going on in the world is not all that's going on in the world. But sometimes you can feel like, as long as I know what's happening in the news, I can keep up with that, then I feel included. So I think to rip children or young people away from their phones is to disconnect them from their friendships and their circles, and it's huge.
Fabulous, Tracy. So far we've talked about the spiritual, we've started talking on the physical and the intellect, the knowledge, that is whether we're equipping our young people well. So what we're going to do, we will stop, as this is part 4. No, this is part 3, and we'll come back on part 4 to finish on the intellect, the love stories, and then the emotions, and finally we'll end up with the social relations. Is that okay? Yeah, so we'll stop there for now. This is Kenya Diaspora Media. My name is Esther from Leicester, and this is my daughter. What's your name?
Tracy.
Yeah, today we came into your rooms, wherever you are watching from, just to talk to you from a mother-daughter kind of context, to be able to know, and also to be able to learn a few things from the younger generation. So I've done a 60-year-old, I've done a 30 plus, now a 20 plus, and maybe in future we can be able to do a teenage. We will stop there for now. Please time us and watch part 4. Look forward for part 4 so that we can finish on the most exciting part of the story, the love, the falling in love and the falling out of love, the social relations, the emotions and all that, and how we deal with those. Otherwise, thank you so much. Join us again on part 4. Thank you for now. Kwaheri.
Bye.
Bye for now. Yeah.